Man, that felt all too familiar. 42-6. It's never a good thing when you have to score at the end of the game to avoid being shut out. Unfortunately, Colorado fans are all too familiar with that feeling based upon what we've seen as program the better part of the last 2 decades. Unfortunately, this game went just about as the rest in this series since Colorado joined the Pac-12 had gone against the Oregon Ducks, right? Very, very one-sided. And in fact, Coach Prime mentioned it in his post-game press conference. He felt like they were never really in the game. And it's because they weren't. They kicked the ball off. Oregon went down, scored, right? Colorado goes 3 and out. Then Oregon responds with another touchdown immediately following that. Look, you go down 2 scores with a defense that cannot stop the run, you're probably not coming back in ball games. And I think a lot of the issues that Colorado had but persevered through the last several weeks showed up again today. It's part of the reason why I spoke with Coach Prime several different times last week about running the football, because I think you can get away playing the way that they played against CSU and even Nebraska, where it's primarily Shadur's offense, right? He's 99% of what you're going to do when you take the field. Problem is, you run up against a top 10 team, you can't be one-dimensional. You have to make the defense play honest with you. And I truly believe, and Coach Prime just mentioned this, that the coaching staff has to reevaluate. They need to. There are a few things that you have to adjust and fix here. I think today they tried to play honest, right? Well, we're going to go in there. Why would we not defer when we win the opening kick, for instance? Look, normally I would say, of course, you're going against conventional wisdom if you win the toss and don't defer. However, you're giving Oregon the opportunity to put their Ferrari out onto the field. The reason I bring that up is because Colorado, with the way that they are structured this year, they're going to have to manufacture wins. And manufacturing wins means it's a whatever it takes mentality. And you're not beholden to what you want to be, but you can adjust to what you need to be. And I felt like, really this first month of the season, that this coaching staff has pushed back against that just a little bit. There's no more time for that. They've got to find a way to run the football early. The reason that Colorado has been so good at 3rd and long is because of Shadur Sanders. But to have success the rest of the season, you have to take pressure off of him. You shouldn't ever have to be good at 3rd and long. The reason that they're in 3rd and long is because they're not good enough on 1st and 2nd down. They're not running the ball effectively, right? And Coach Prime mentioned that after the game. And I tried to get him to talk about it this week, right? I asked him several different times about just his philosophy, right? There's an old adage, look, if you're running the ball for 1 yard, 2 yards in the first and second quarter, hopefully if you stick with it and commit to the ground game, later those start to open up. I just don't think there's any committing to it right now. I think Sean Lewis had a hell of a plan for TCU. Hell of a plan, right? And it's probably easy from the outside to just pick and choose and say, hey, it's play calling. Hey, it's approach, right? Because I felt like a lot of what happened on this field behind me today was about the Jimmies and the Joes more than it was about the X's and the O's. You just didn't have the dudes. But at the bottom line, Colorado had the Jimmies and the Joes not to look like they didn't belong on the field with Oregon. That was a surprise. I didn't anticipate 42-6. I thought they'd lose today. Oregon probably cover the spread, but at the very same time, man, they absolutely walloped the Buffs. And even Coach Prime mentioned that. He said it's a good old-fashioned butt kicking, right? And look, when you get your butt kicked, there's a couple of ways that you can respond to it. You either stay down on the ground, right, feeling sorry for yourself, or you get back up, you wipe your nose, and you keep going. And I think for the Buffs, this is a huge week, because you do have USC, right? It's not a game that maybe naturally you let down for. No. The circus is coming back to Boulder next week. Undisputed is going to be there Friday. It's going to be big noon kickoff. We just heard today that Drake and LeBron might be there. There's a lot to work on this week. And what I'll be most interested to see is clearly how the players respond to this, but the coaching staff, right? The coaching staff, because I felt like I said, are you beholden to what you want to be, or are you adjusting to what you need to be? Now, next year, I think you can be beholden to what you want to be. You're going to have a lot more of your players. You're going to have a lot more personnel that fits what you want to do. You just don't have that in the building, unfortunately, right now. So there are going to be times when you have to manufacture wins and do things a little bit differently. I think you can stand there, plant your flag, and say, this is how we're going to play. And I don't have any problems with that. But a good coach always can recognize the situation and make adjustments based upon what the situation is dictating to them. And I think that Colorado in general Shiloh, I asked him about it last week. He said, we're really good at learning week to week. And he referenced the fact that Nebraska was a run-heavy team and TCU was, pass-heavy team. And then they went back to Colorado State that was throwing the ball more. They didn't make those week-to-week adjustments this week. They're going to have to be much better moving forward. They just will, from the players' perspective, from a coaching staff perspective, and they know that too. That's not a surprise. They just got their tails whooped up and down the field 42-6. Like I said, if you've got to score to avoid a shutout, things probably didn't go all that well for you. I look at this team defensively right now. They cannot stop the run. Bottom line, I don't want to single anybody out, really. And it's, not being, watching my words. I just don't want to single anybody out because I think everybody is part of the problem there, right? I mean, when your defensive line as a unit is constantly getting blown off the ball by 3 to 4 yards, opening giant holes for opposing running backs, it's tough to win. In fact, I think Oregon could have actually made this game look a little uglier had they not tried to throw the ball as much as they did, quite honestly. Even Jaquez Robinson came up with an interception, which is probably the lone highlight of the day for the Buffs. This is a team that's capable of a lot more than they showed today. This certainly isn't representative. I've seen a lot of the hate, right? That we expected the haters to come out of the woodwork. That's how this stuff works when you're playing on this level of national attention. People are going to be jealous of you. They're going to be mad if you haven't earned it yet. And certainly there's a lot of people that feel like they haven't earned it yet. But the funniest part about that is the perception, right? Where are you calibrating from? Are you calibrating from the fact that this team was 1-11 last year? And they've already won 3 games, tripling their win total. They're halfway to a bowl game. Or are you calibrating based upon the fact that you feel like the field goal posts are moving each week because they keep surpassing expectation? That's the thing, is when you surpass expectation, more is expected of you in return. And I think today you'll probably have a little leveling out of just the expectations and maybe just a little bit of the noise around this program. But make no mistake, Colorado's here to stay. Coach Prime's here to stay. Like, they're going to be talking about it on Undisputed and First Take just like they were last week. I mean, Undisputed's coming to town on Friday. They're not just going to say, oh, well, Colorado lost to Oregon 42-6. Forget about it. No. Colorado's here to stay. Shedeur Sanders is here to stay. On Shedeur. I asked him after the Nebraska game about holding onto the ball as much as he does and not surrendering where others might. And he said, I always know that me versus you, I'm better. Well, Shedeur, today you weren't. I believe most of the time you are, and I think he could have been, but today he wasn't. And I think part of that was frustration, right? But at the bottom line, there's another level to this game. You can't come out here and just go ball against a top 10 team. It's got to be a strategy-based attack. You've got to be okay living to fight another day. If the play's not there, I mean, look at Peyton Manning. Ground it, and let's move on. Peyton would take self-sacks at the end of his career just to keep drives moving because he knew there was nothing good that was going to come out of him trying to make a play. I'm not comparing their skill sets. What I'm saying is if you don't learn that it's about the big picture, it's about what you can do in 60 minutes rather than every single play trying to hit a home run, you're going to end up in some tough spots. And he's taken way too many bad sacks, okay? I'm not putting kid gloves on there. He is way too good to take that many bad sacks. If it's not there, they've got to do a better job recognizing it. And look, if it's not there, there's some opportunities to tuck and go. Again, it took until the fourth quarter for them to get him working on the ground. I think one of the biggest issues Colorado is facing is their offense has been scouted really well now because teams really want to beat these guys. And when that happens, you cannot be one-dimensional because if you are, they know what you want to do. And I think the running game, and that's why I brought it up several different times with Coach Prime last week. He kind of rebuffed me. But against good teams in this conference, in Division I football, you got to run the ball, man. You have to establish a ground game. And I talked about it, and I feel like I'm going to talk about it until I'm blue in the face until they fix it with the hyper-tempo offense, okay? If you're not running the ball effectively, if you're not running the ball efficiently, you race yourself off of the field. And Colorado does not have the defense right now to support that, unfortunately. They just don't, right? I mean, hopefully, and let me add a quick point there. The first few weeks it worked really well because they were extremely opportunistic, turning the ball over. 10 turnovers through 3 weeks. But if we look back to TCU was knocking on the door before Trevor Woods, right, picked it off. That would have been a different game if they just scored that touchdown. Shoot, Travis Hunter, with his interception at TCU, that changed the entire game. This defense has given up a lot of explosive plays, as defensive coordinator Charles Kelly told us this week, but they've been opportunistic. The thing is, as much as you want to be that way, you've got to have something to fall back on. And hopefully for the Buffs, in the future, they can fall back on being rock solid. They haven't been so far, and they probably won't this year against top 10 teams, or maybe even top 25 teams, really, specifically because that defensive line, there is no push. They're constantly getting blown off the ball. Offensive line-wise, I mean, they got to keep Shedeur upright, and Shedeur has to give them a better opportunity at doing so, man. Like, if it's not there, just tuck and go or kill it and move on. But taking 15, 20-yard sacks, I mean, Colorado, you know, it's funny, I made a comment to one of my media brethren during the game. I said, I haven't even looked at the box score because it's all bad. All I know is, you know, Oregon had more points through 3 quarters, I think, than Colorado had total yards. So at the end of the day, this is a great wake-up call, right? I mean, they were never going to win every game this year. At the beginning of the year, we said 4 to 5 wins is great. Anything less, maybe somebody got hurt. Anything more is gravy. Well, look, the field goal posts have since moved, certainly, but I think there is a healthy amount of recalibration down. It's like, all right, national title this year? I don't know about national title this year. Hopefully they can contend next year with a good enough recruiting class, but I'll tell you what today did prove once and for all. Receiver's not a priority. Offensive line, defensive line, huge priorities, okay? Huge priorities. I think they'd be okay. Like, I think even in a game like today, if you had guys that could hold up at the point of attack, you'd be all right. Unfortunately, they didn't, not against this quality of opponent. Now, we'll see what happens with USC. A lot of people, and I saw a lot of this reaction, a lot of people writing off Colorado for that game next week. I always thought this is the one that they would absolutely get smoked in. It's tough to win here. It's really tough. This place was rocking. First game with students back. This place is so football crazy, okay, that today was the very first time their crowd did different sections as far as like green, yellow, the very first game, and they got it almost perfect. That's a really good fan base. It's a great fan base. It's a tough place to play. Hostile environment. TCU didn't hold a candle to the crowd that Oregon showed up with today, okay? Those kids here at Autzen, for their very first football game of the year since they've been back on campus, they were ready for football, and who could blame them? The bottom line of this is this came down to a foundation issue with this team, and it's the same issue that Colorado football has had for the better part of the last 2 decades. Not good enough in the trenches. They know it, you know it, I know it, everybody in here knows it, right? They won't have any issue with Focus this week. He'll have his team's complete and total attention. This is a long football season. They're still 3-1. They're still 3-1. However, I think a lot of people were hoping that they skipped a few more steps along the way. But at the end of the day, you don't go from the street to the penthouse overnight. It takes some time. It takes some time. And when we're talking about a talent gap as large as this one is, it's going to take some time, man. It just will. Even still, with that talent gap, they are better than what they showed. Like I said, do not write them off next week. I always thought that this is the game that they would have trouble with. USC, they're going to give USC a game. Maybe I'm wrong. I felt that way since the beginning of the year. Colorado's never beaten USC, ever. I think they give USC a game next week. They'll be ready for Caleb Williams. Shedeur's heard all the noise. But again, I want to end this with something Shedeur said. He talked about being perfect, needing perfection. If Shedeur has to be perfect next week, they won't win. They've got to commit to running the ball early in the game. And as good as Dylan Edwards is, not with Dylan Edwards between the tackles. It just doesn't make sense. He's a change of pace, swing pass guy. He's not running, but that's fair. I get it. And he's a hell of a player. I understand it. In the Pac-12, it's not going to work until he's maybe a little bit older, or your offense can do some different things, or the defense has to respect you so much so on the outside, which I mean, they do now, but Colorado just hasn't run the ball. And I'm done hearing I'm really done with they can't run the ball, because they can. They have to start trying to do it. They do. Even with this offensive line, they have to find a way to take more pressure off Shedeur. I have no idea how many times he got hurried or hit today, but it's got to be in the 20s, right? I mean, he was constantly on the ground and took some of the worst sacks, man. So part of that is on him, part of that is on the offensive line, but one way or another, you have to find a way to solve that problem. You do. 42-6, just leaves a bad taste in your mouth, right? Last time you're going to face Oregon as conference opponents. At least they got them once here in 2016. What a game that was. What a game that was. Oh, last thing on the way out. Traditional jerseys. We getting those this year? Or just some unique combination that makes sense? Just one. Next weekend against USC at home, don't come out wearing black, white. Don't come out wearing white, gold. Go with the staple, right? Go with the staple. It'll look better. All right, from Watson.